hearing me, right?
Yeah.
Right. Thanks a lot. Thank you everyone for having us here to start with. Ramon was sort of the instigator of this thing via Facebook, contacting me and so on. I have to say that I am happy in particular to see a third person that David would have seen driving in those days that he doesn't even realize is here. So Richard Knox. Richard, I don't know how many of you all have heard of Richard, but Richard was primarily a Group 4 driver in single-seaters, very, very fast cars, racing against the Moody's and the rest of the guys in those days, myself as well, and Jimmy. So Richard, come out of the sun. I should find it. Anyway, thanks for coming. As David said, we are really only going to give you some theory. When we all aspire to drive race cars, and many of you, by the way, let me just explain that we have done this thing, we developed this course, Jimmy and myself, I think it was in 2002, when we were doing the Carib Stock Car Series, the second year. And there were a number of new people getting interested and so on in motor racing at the time. And it was seen that we needed, as I had in our day when we were young, now getting into it, a bit of tuition was necessary. And we were asked to prepare something, and we did, and it evolved to what we actually had it done several times. In fact, last time was right here when cars used to start, the start was down there or something. It was in 2008, the last time that we did it. So actually another fun, just before I start, an interesting thing is that cleaning up before Christmas, I came across all these documents, and I said, I'll never do this thing again. I had CDs, all kind of stuff, and I just tossed them all. I kept the master, right? You just want. I said, well, just for posterity, I'll keep it. So when Ramon organized this thing, you know, I had to go digging, and I found it again. You know, at the end of the day, I'm going to hand out to you all some little cards that have a URL on them, a web address that you can each download a copy of this for yourself. It's a pretty lengthy document. We used to do it in 2 nights at the stadium. First night was all the theory, right? And the second part was putting it, what we call putting it into practice, where you actually go out, well, in theory still, but on the track we spoke about that. And then we'd have a third day, which was a day at Wallachies in those days, to a practical session like we're going to have after here. Anyhow, we can now, you'll get this thing, and it's quite a lengthy document, so I can't possibly fit all of this in today. It's about 55 pages long, and but it will give you, it'll fill in a lot of what we're going to just touch on today. So hopefully it'll be of some help to you. Alright, we all get involved in racing primarily because we are motorheads and we like cars. And there are 2 aspects to a racing car so far. Thank God they haven't got totally remote control cars yet. There's a car and there's a driver. And what this focuses on is primarily the driving side of it. We all know what we have in our cars and how to prepare them. So I was never a very mechanical person. I focused on the driving. And this is what we're going to talk about mostly today. A lot of people sometimes will start off with the sport. Again, if they get a very fast car, they have it made. You know, they just have a fast car, so they'll be able to beat everybody who has slow cars or even cars similar to theirs. But when you go out there and you start to drive, it is only there that you begin to realize that there's a bit more to it than just having a fast car. Have any of you all done this with us in the past? Back in 2008, any of you all around? David, you were, right. Well, I'm glad that we're not going to bore you too much by repeating it. As I said, what we want to focus on is driving. So we're going to touch on some theory and so forth about how to make your car, whatever car it is, go around a track as fast as possible. And it comes down to learning some general theory and then applying it. Over time, experience is really all that will matter. The experience you gain, but it's good to have at least some pointers to begin with, so you have a starting point, and as you gain experience you will refine that, and hopefully you will become great drivers. Alright, so first thing we want to talk about is a pen or something. A marker, yeah? I don't really need a marker for this part. Actually a steering wheel would be nice, but we use this book and 10 Alright. some of the modern steering wheels are not wrong, you know, they're not necessarily as rectangular as this, but we use this, right? First thing about driving, you know, there are so many things we do by habit, right, in our lives, whatever they be, you know, you get up at a particular time, you go to bed at a particular time, there are habits that we develop. Many of them are totally, we don't even think about, and that's the whole thing. It applies to everything we do. When we are driving cars, we are also and have developed habits. And some of those are good habits, and some of them are really not good habits. So, why am I talking about habits? Habits are things that you subconsciously do. You don't have to sit and think about it. It just happens because it's a habit. It's something you've done over and over and over. And because of that, it becomes a natural thing to do. When you're driving in competition in a car on a course like this, any type of circuit, rally course, whatever, you're going to be encountering situations with the car and having to concentrate, of course, and focus. And you want, if anything odd happens, you want it to be natural what you do to react to that, to whatever happens in that car, in the situation you're in. And the first thing we want to start about in terms of developing good habits is how do you, it starts when you get in the car, how do you sit in the car? Right? Now, we see NASCAR drivers like this, right? And I think quite often they have to be able to leverage those things, but they're not doing a lot of very, very tight turns. They're certainly not driving on anything like this. And I could never drive a car like that. I mean, maybe I could one day if I had to, but it's going to be very comfortable and natural, right? Then you have the other extreme, the guys that sit back like this with their hand way off holding the steering wheel a mile away. Well, if you're going to find yourself in a situation where you don't have enough leverage to turn the wheel, or you're not even going to be able to reach the instruments or things on the dashboard if you need to. So those are the two extremes that are not, if any of you have found yourself sitting either too close or too far away from the wheel, there's actually we have a diagram.
Some pictures here that when you go on the website you will see, you know, an example of being too close, being cramped right up, and then the opposite, driving with your hands fully extended. Alright? So that's a no-no as well.
Okay. The idea is to, of course, be somewhere in between there. It sounds stupid and basic, but it's a starting point. Right? You get in the car, the first thing I do when I get in the car, I got into one this morning, and the first thing I did, I checked the position that I was in, and in fact the seat was just perfect for me. But it's something I didn't have to think about. It's something that was natural. I'm not going to get in a car and just automatically drive it. It's like this because I wouldn't be feeling right. Second thing, your steering wheel. That is the main instrument you use in a car to make it do what you have to make it do. And holding the steering wheel, you know, I remember many years ago being told when I was about 16 years old, I can't remember how I held the wheel that day, but the person told me opposite ends of the wheel go. So I thought, alright, that makes sense. You know. Basically, when you're holding the steering wheel, we see people, for example, grabbing the wheel on the inside. Fist, right? Yes, making like a fist. They grab the wheel on the inside. That is a complete no-no. Don't ever, that's a habit again. And I'm still talking about habits. We're not talking about if this is a revelation. I'm just saying that we must get rid of bad habits if you have any, and cultivate the right habits. Yeah. So holding the steering wheel, you never grab it on the inside. Second thing, you don't drive one hand here and one hand here. Or one hand on the window and the other hand on top of the wheel, as most people do. I used to be taking all my girlfriends and they didn't think I was very cool because I used to sit in the car like this. All the cool guys were like this. And then they found out how cool I was anyway. Anyhow, so that's another thing. So the ideal position for holding the wheel is roughly at opposite ends. We like to refer to it as 10 to 2. The 10 to 2 position, right? So somewhere between 2:45 to 3. Oh yeah, we're living in the 21st century, and you all know about analog clocks? Right. Those are the ones that have hands. And 3 is over here, 9 is here, 10, 2, right? So it's roughly in that position. So when you're going in a straight line, that's where you want to have your hand on the wheel. And again, not out there, not in here, somewhere in this kind of range. And that is a very, very, both those things are very, very important. The if you just place your hands on the wheel like this, if you're not driving a cart, if you're driving a cart, it's a whole different thing. You know, that's it, one position, full lock, great. And certain other very high-end cars may be similar to that. But most cars, and certainly the cars that are here today, if you turn that far, you still have no full lock. Right? And at this point, your hands are starting to get any wears on. So what you would tend to do, if you're approaching, for example, a right-hand turn, is you will, and you know it's not a very, like a hairpin kind of right-hand turn, you would actually place your hand somewhere else along the wheel. And so you straight, just about to enter the corner, you'll actually move your hand positions, again opposite each other, but move them so that when you do make that turn, there's more lock, enough lock to make it work. So you try to ensure that your hands don't get anywhere from one another when you anticipate what to do. I found that when I'm going very fast in a race car and through a turn, whatever the position, depending on how tight the turn is, I always tend to find that my hands are generally roughly at about this position as the maximum amount of lock I need to do it at high speed. In some cases, however, you know, again, a hairpin, you might turn a bit more cross. So what happens if you actually reach to that point and you need now to go further, get more lock? And that's where we go to the what we call the hand-over-hand technique, where as your hands cross, you take out this hand and grab the wheel here and wheel again. And then you have the reverse now as you straighten out the car. So hand-over-hand technique. The idea is to have your hands out of the corner that way and still be in control and grabbing the wheel. Speaking of which, holding the steering wheel, or steering the road car, one finger, you know, you got two fingers on the wheel and stuff. When you're in a race car and a situation where you're pushing the car, always make sure you're holding the wheel proper. I'm not saying that tense up your hands like this, right? But certainly make sure that that car, for example, if you've got big racing tires or what, I feel we used to have these concrete slabs, and you'd be on a car with 8-inch or 10-inch wide front tires and slicks, and the car would weave on, you know, as it touched the cracks in the car. Jason, you would know about that. Richard, you know about that. James, you know. And that car would pull itself all over the place if you are not holding on to it. So you do have to apply a little bit of grip on that steering. I tend to have found myself that as I enter a corner, I tended to grip it a little tighter, because obviously you need to relax a little bit. You don't want to get cramped with your hands, as I have done in the past. But again, you're not holding it like a little baby. You want to hold on to that wheel so that you are in control of it and not the other way around. So let me just take a brief look again. So that touches on the question of habits, right? Another thing that I want to talk about is on my eyes with, right, awareness. This is another thing that's very important. Again, you're driving one car at a time on a course like this, but even when you're on the road, there are lots of other cars around you, and certainly when you're on the road, you want to be aware of what's happening around you. So your mirrors, use your mirrors. You always need to know. And in a competitive situation, if you're running more than one car at a time, you're on a circuit, for example, you definitely want to know who is next to you, coming up on either left or right, directly behind you. So you have to be aware of what's happening. But you not only want to be aware of what's behind, you want to be aware of what's going on. I've seen a lot of people where, you all have sure experienced this, where you're driving down the road, you see something happening, and you hit the brakes, and you're wondering, well, that guy ahead of me is going to hit that car, because he hasn't touched, they haven't even seen it yet, you know. But if you have that aware, you've got to keep looking ahead and be aware of these things, so you can take evasive action or get an opportunity for overtaking on a race situation, you know, because or a fella might be spinning and you want to decide, well, hello, I need to know what to do. You have to be aware, and you have to decide where you're going to go to avoid making contact. So that awareness thing is very, very important. And again, these are habits. Everything that I'm talking about today, even further down as we get into lines and so on, to this day, I'm going to be 61 this year, right? So I started racing when I was 17. So To this day, I still practice it on the road, and I'm not talking fast driving. I'm just talking about focus. I see the apexes. Every corner to me has an apex. I can't miss it. I can't help it, you know. And but we'll talk more about that down the line. But these are habits that have, over the years, just stuck with me, and these are things that will help every one of you out there when you go out in your car. Having these habits so that you can focus more on the course and refining what you're doing in the car when you're driving, rather than trying to figure out where to put your hands.
As we change, but these things don't change. And these habits don't change. The younger ones, another saying that's very true is that until you're 30, you make your habits. After you're 30, your habits make you. So if you develop these good habits of driving technique, holding steering, then they will continue with you as you go along. You don't have to even think about it.
Yeah, that's right. Habits are important, a very important start, very basic, very important. Your instruments in your car, very important to keep an eye on those too. Those are things that, again, all of you motorheads would want to be looking at. But sometimes you get carried away on a trying to focus. I mean, this is a very tight course. You're not going to get much chance to look at instruments here. Even on a race circuit where you have the time on it.